being a creative or an entrepreneur or a small business owner, right? When you are that kind of person, but you are not stepping into it or you're not walking it out, that is a very depressing state to be in. I remember when I was in corporate America and I was getting raises. And I remember every time I would get a raise, that was a marker for me of how comfortable I had gotten in this environment. Like I had gotten so comfortable and I have stayed here long enough where I would cycle around and I would be in position to get a raise. So where for some people, they would celebrate this moment. For me, that was an indication that I was sitting somewhere that I knew was not my calling, that I knew that wasn't the place I was supposed to be. And because I was too afraid to step into whatever it is that, God was calling me into, I was going to remain here. So it was always scary for me. And I was always afraid the more money I made in corporate America, that the longer I was going to end up staying there, right? Because it was going to be harder and harder for me to leave. The more security, it bought me, right? The more security it afforded me. So I asked God, to help me, to free me from the cycle that I was in. So I want to talk a little bit about that because the journey that he took me on was not one that I expected. And what I learned, and I'll just share this with you guys, fundamentally, when you have a vision inside of you, you have to feel safe. You have to feel safe. And I was not the type of person that felt safe. Everything I did was from a standpoint of survival. Okay. I went through a lot of childhood trauma, and that childhood trauma, we already know it now. It develops hyper independence. It develops, just different personality traits in you. Right. So ultimately, I believed in me. Right. I believed in God, but I believed in my power to get things done. And it also made me an extreme planner, very rigid, just a lot of things. Okay. So when you want to step out and get into entrepreneurship, or you get into being more of a creative, a small business owner, etc., that is a risk in its own way, right? It's a risk. And when you have a job, especially if you're in the States, there's that stability of, what you're making on a weekly basis. Okay. Being a creative, being an entrepreneur, small business owner doesn't give you that. And the reality for me is that I simply didn't feel safe. I just did not feel safe. Okay. And I didn't know that. What I do know is that self-preservation was a high priority of mine, because I would go through things and the thought of self-preservation would come to my mind. Self-preservation was a common thought in my brain. Like I'm like, that don't sound like some good self-preservation. Like I used to analyze different decisions people would make, and I'm like, that does not sound like self-preservation to me. So self-preservation was a high priority of mine. Super hyper independence and that need to be, to preserve myself. My solution was to be hyper independent, extreme planner, right? Solution oriented, all of those different things. But ultimately, I was that person that always put everything on my back. Okay. Everything was on my back. I just trusted myself. However, I did not trust that things will work out for me if I stepped out in a high risk, what I consider to be a high risk environment. So I knew that I would succeed, but I just didn't know how that would look like. And because I'm an extreme planner, hyper independent, likes to be in control, all of those different things, I needed to be able to see that picture in order to step out. I needed that picture. And here's the thing, when you step out in business or, whatever your creative passions are, it doesn't matter how much you plan. You just never be able to plan for what is ahead. It is literally one of those things where you have to be comfortable with the unknown, right? And our jobs are not as secure as we think they are, right? However, we try to put ourselves in a position where we think, okay, the likelihood of being here is pretty strong. And also getting that check on a standard basis, it adds to that illusion in our minds that we are secure. Anyways, when it came time for me to step out, I'm seeking God about what it is that's going on inside of me that's standing in the way. And it really just came down to safe. I don't feel safe. So ultimately, I went on this entire journey to feel safe. This entire journey to feel safe where I could finally step out in the unknown and stay there. And at the core of feeling safe is trusting that God got you. Trusting that God got you, that he's not going to let you down. He's not going to sabotage you, right? He's not going to pull the rug from under your feet. That is literally at the core of feeling safe. But when you have a history like mine, right, and you have real life experiences, it's very difficult to look at it and say, yeah, I definitely have full confidence that God got me. So that's where healing comes in. That's where healing comes in. That's where renewing your mind comes in. That's where such deep inner work comes into play, because ultimately self-preservation is my highest priority, right? Because I've experienced situations and environments around me where people have hurt me, let me down, betrayal, all of that things, abuse, that whole bit. So I have to protect myself. So then I'm going to step out into the unknown where whatever it is that I've built up with my own hands, this is secure to me, but it's not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling and is weighing me down. So I want to be fulfilled. I want to have these burdens lifted off of me, but I have to be willing to feel safe. How do you solve that? How do you solve that? And that took such deep, intense work. That's not something, even though I've hired a therapist, my therapist was amazing, but she just couldn't take me that deep. I had to go that deep. I feel like what therapy did is it highlighted to me and made me feel less crazy. It highlighted to me, oh no, it makes sense that you are where you're at because you went through this and you went through that and you went through that. So what therapy did is it validated me. That's what therapy did. It validated my experience. And I needed that, right, at the time. But ultimately, that was not the end goal for me. I wanted freedom. And I asked God, what do I have to do to get free? Okay, I'm aware. I have this understanding. I have this knowledge. How do I get free? Listen, the process to getting free was real. There was a lot of forgiveness involved. There was a lot of releasing and letting go and revisiting moments I didn't want to revisit and see it from God's eyes, right? See different moments from God's eyes, because I have all these different instances that were inside of me that were reasons why, okay, God is good, but you can't fully trust him because he let this happen. You can't fully trust him because that happened. You can't fully trust him because of this. Because remember, I'm walking into the unknown, and self-preservation is not going to allow me to walk into the dark because the unknown is dark. It feels like darkness. So I'm going to stay where I feel like it's light, right? But the reality is where I feel like it's light is with what I built up with my own hands, with what I'm familiar with, is what I feel like I have control over. But yet it's burdensome. So essentially I was in this cage, right? I was in this cage of my own making, and I had to be willing to trust God. Now there are a series of events that happened in my life where God made that I only had one path that I could take, and it was the path towards him. And I know why he did that to me is because I surrendered to him. Now, obviously, when that situation was going on, it added more to that. See, this is why I can't trust you. This is why. But really what he was doing is that he was fulfilling the prayer. You wanted freedom. I'm guiding you towards freedom. And where do you think he guided me? Right to him. Right to him. And even though I was able to forgive, I was able to let go and do all these different things, the final step in all this was feeling safe with God. But in order for me to be able to see God, every single idol had to be torn down. Every single idol. And when I say idol, I mean that I had things that I trusted in more than him, right? That gave me the ability to trust myself, meaning I trust you, God, but just in case, I got this little door over here that I'm going to dip up out of. You ever have a exit plan before you arrive somewhere? Like, okay, I'm coming here, but this is my exit strategy, right? So I had exit strategies. Listening to myself now is wild. It's wild. I had a whole exit strategy. I had a whole exit strategy in my relationship with God. Why? Because I already felt like he was gonna do me wrong. He was going to do me wrong. He was gonna let me down. I'm gonna try to trust him, right? Like a toxic relationship. I'm gonna try this again, but just in case, this is my plan this time. So, I don't get, caught, in a situation where I can't navigate my way out of. So this is how I plan to save myself. So ultimately, I didn't lean on him to save me. I lean on myself. And there's the problem. Because if who I'm really fundamentally at my core, who I'm really leaning on and trusting on is myself, I don't have the power to see in the future. I don't have the power to see the darkness and know where to go and left. And I just don't have that level of power, right? I can calculate things. I can make, probabilities and all of that, but I just don't know for sure. And self-preservation and that need to feel safe and secure, I need that. So that means if I'm going to go in territory that I'm completely unfamiliar with, I have to trust in the guide that is there. It all goes back to trust. So I had to get to the point where I relinquished even myself as my own savior. And I had to completely trust God that he got me. And that's a very difficult thing for people to do, is to truly, truly, truly believe that God got you. This is why we do this whole song and dance like, oh, we believe in God. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns. We do that whole thing. But then when we go into our life, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm drowning. Oh God, why are you doing this to me? Right? That's why we go through that, because ultimately double-mindedness. We are taught that it's okay to be double-minded. And a lot of us inherited double-minded traits, right? Literally, like our neural pathways and our DNA have been impacted by generations of trauma in people, being in all types of rebellion. I talk about demonic covenants and curses, all of that, right? All of that. It impacts us, whether you believe in it, whether you recognize it or not, right? It goes down the line and it flows and it impacts us. And then now you want freedom. So it's like you're in a place where either you operate in this whole survival brain, where you are in complete control and you do things according to what you feel like makes the most sense, like you give yourself that full authority and power over your life, or you allow yourself to be spirit-led. You allow yourself to be spirit-led and you trust God with every single step that you take. See, when I do the former, I can plan out, 10, 15 years. This is what it's going to do. I'm going to do this, that. But with the latter, it's day by day. It is day by day. You might have a big picture. You might have an idea where things are going, but it's day by day, a process of trust. And even though I hated that day by day feeling, right? I'm still not 100% comfortable with it. Let me be clear. However, it makes sense because I would never step out into that unknown if I needed to have that, what the next year would look, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And how do I make it happen? Plan, etc. Like a whole itinerary of my life for the next 5, 10 years. I would never step out into the unknown if I needed that, because again, I can't see into the unknown. So I would just be making things up, right? And I'm not going to do that because I'm serious about my self-preservation. So I needed to be concrete. So if I was relying on concrete plans for the next 10, 15 years, I would have never been able to move, and which made sense why I would stay stuck and stagnant in the same position, because I was waiting for a level of security and clarity, right? And definitiveness that I was never going to get. But you know what I end up getting instead? Trust. And when I got that trust and I got my confidence restored and all those barriers begin to break down, and obviously I talk about it, guys, prayer and fasting, because there's certain breakthroughs that you need. You are only going to get it through prayer and fasting. It breaks the pattern. It really does. So if I'm never going to get that, what's the alternative? To feel safe. Isn't that ultimately why we don't walk in the dark? Because it doesn't feel safe. We walk around in the light because it feels safe. In your home, the same things that exist in the dark exist in the light. But your experience and how you engage that environment is based on whether you see light or whether you see dark. What's there did not change. It's the light that makes you feel safe and the darkness makes you feel unsafe. So I need to feel safe. Because if you felt safe in what you perceive as darkness, if you felt safe in it, you would move around, you would move forward. But because you don't feel safe, you don't move forward. So feeling safe was at the core. But how are you going to feel safe if you don't trust? Because the guide and the voice that's guiding you through what is perceived as darkness to your mind, the unknown looks like darkness. God, the Holy Spirit, right? He is that voice there for you. And this ties back to Peter. Peter walking on water. He's in the boat. They see Jesus from the distance. He says, Jesus, can I come to you? Say, yeah, come. So now he does something that he would never attempt to do. Jesus. You going out there and risking stepping into that business, creative, right? Moving to a new town and things like that. In your other mindset, you would never do it. But somehow Jesus gave you the courage to do it. And it's not courage in the way people think, like, yeah, I'm macho and I'm going to. It's not that kind of courage. There's a different kind of courage that comes with feeling safe. We've seen it, right? You've seen it in children who feel safe. They have certain kind of parents, etc., and they can talk to them and they can say certain things because they feel safe. There is a courage that he did. He knows he's a fisherman. It wasn't too long ago that the boat was sinking because it had too many fish. So he knows what water has the power to do. He knows that water has the power to drown you. But somehow Jesus says, come, and all of the fears that would be standing in his way and all of the different calculations he would make, it was not there any longer. He just simply trusted. When he was in the presence of Jesus, it was more than just being in his presence, because everybody else on the boat was in Jesus' presence. Being in his presence wasn't enough. When he was listening to Jesus, everybody else was listening to Jesus. It was when he felt safe enough to trust Jesus that he experienced that miracle. The miracle that you're looking for in your life is going to happen when you feel safe enough to trust God. Simple. So if you're going to do any kind of work, right? When New Year's comes, different resolutions, and you're trying to find another way to push yourself out of whatever box you find yourself in, whatever pattern or whatever, prison of your own making, whatever it is, you're trying to find another way to push yourself out of that. And when you're a planner and an organizer, all these different things, right? Survival, you start trying to find intellectual things. Maybe I just need to get this planner and download this app and get this pen and drink this water. You're trying to find all of these things externally that's going to push you out of that place and into the version that you want to become. What you need is simple. You need to feel safe, and you need to trust, and you need to take action steps in faith because you feel safe and you trust. And until you feel secure that God is guiding you towards good, and He's not guiding you to drown you, but His desire is that you walk on water with Him. And that water can be symbolic of whatever it is in your life. But He wants to be there with you, walking alongside of you, coaching you, guiding you, all of that. Until you surrender to that and submit to that, you are going to continue to play around with this mindset that you're in control. And I say play around because ultimately you're not. It's an illusion. But you feel like you are. And feeling like you're in control makes you feel safe. You want to feel safe. And right now you feel safe in what you're in, even though it's unfulfilling, it's draining you, whatever it's doing. It's time for a change. So if you're in that place, you're probably saying, well, Michelle, what do I do next, right? Okay, I understand I need to feel safe, secure. Like, what are the next steps? You have to feel safe enough that you can tell God why you don't feel like He is worthy of your trust. You have to be able to express that to Him. That's the beginning of you guys building a relationship, a real, true relationship built on honesty and transparency. You telling Him, like, God, this is all the reasons why I don't trust you. I want to trust you and everything. I believe that you're great. I believe you're magnificent. I just don't believe that you're going to be great to me. And this is why. And you have to allow yourself to go through that experience of confessing that to Him and asking Him for reconciliation. It's important because you have to reconcile yourself back to Him. Once you've gone through that exercise, right? Journal as much that comes to your heart, that comes to your mind. Sit in the, I want to say, despair of feeling rejected, of feeling abandoned. Like, allow yourself to feel like that God feels this way about you and bring it to Him. You're not going to sit there for long, but bring it to Him. You're confessing, you're admitting this because God doesn't miss the opportunity to let you know that He cares. Oh my gosh. He doesn't miss. Another thing I will say, and you guys know how serious I am about this, fasting and prayer. If you're not familiar, you are now. Fasting and prayer, because a lot of things that you're dealing with and suffering with, even your mindset, self-sabotaging mindsets, it's spiritual warfare. And you want to break the power of that. So even if you're going to do that letter, I would do that letter or that confessing with God under the boundaries of a fast. I would spiritually protect myself inside of a fast, and then I will begin to just pour all this, right, bring it to God's throne so that the enemy's not able to use it when you're outside of a fast to try to create more torment, sabotage, and attack your mind in different ways, right? So I would do all of this inside of the boundary of a fast, to be honest with you. God is not going to miss the opportunity to step in and let you know how much He actually loves you and cares for you and show you where all of that distorting, right, is coming from. Prayer and fasting is so key because we're under a lot of the spiritual warfare that attacks our minds and tries to get us to think of God in a way that sabotages ourselves. This goes back to Eve, right, being in the garden. Here I am, Satan is talking to her, telling her, like, no, this is actually what God is doing. He doesn't mean you well. And now you're making decisions based off of buying into that belief. So when you're praying and you're fasting, you're breaking the bonds of belief systems, right, and pathways of belief systems that are speaking darkness against you. And when you are buying into these belief systems, it manifests in your life because you're living your life in a way that's sabotaging you because you have a thought that's in your mind that thinks that this is true. So the decisions that you make then align with the thoughts that you have. So that breaking that is powerful within itself. And this is why you can't just fast one time and think it's all done. You have to be willing, especially if you don't feel safe, you have to be willing to constantly go to God and allow Him to restore you internally, right? And tear down all the strongholds that are preventing you from, one, seeing Him in a loving light and seeing yourself through the lens of love. Because when you are able to trust God and you are able to see the beauty and the power and the amazingness that He puts inside of you, then when that voice calls you out into that place, now you're going to be like Peter, not calculating the fact like people can't walk on water. Getting in water is dangerous. You're not going to go through all of those processes and your brain going in the direction that it usually goes. Instead, you're going to say, if you told me I can do it, Jesus, I believe I can do it because of you. And there's going to be a sense of inner security that you have now that you never had in walking in the unknown. And it's not because you're now counting the risk of the unknown. It's because you're listening to the voice of God in that place and you're trusting that more than things that you see, hear, all of that. If you listen to this and follow this, I just changed your life. I just changed your life. I know I did. If you implement this, your life will be transformed. Your life will be transformed. So linked in my bio, linked in the description I have a lot of different resources. But to get started, I would say start with the 3-day freedom fast. Start with that guide. It's linked in the bio. I do have the freedom prayer. That's a free download, right? If you're going to do a fast by yourself, that's a great starter. Don't get me wrong. It's an amazing starter. It really is, right? It's amazing. Matter of fact, just download it anyways. It's in the 3-day freedom fast guide as well. But that's a great starter for anyone. But if you want to start actually investing in doing the work, the transformational work, begin with the 3-day freedom fast guide. Start there. Start there and do the daily. It's like a workbook / devotional, and pour yourself out into doing those exercises, okay? Pour yourself out. Once you get started there and you pour yourself out and you follow the instructions I have laid out for you every single day, the Holy Spirit will speak to you. God will speak to you, right? You just have to listen. He will speak to you and do the instructions that he speaks to you. Whatever he tells you to do, just do it. Don't get in your head overthinking. No, just do it. I have videos that are already for each day. So those videos you can follow along with. And I also have like a group community to help you and support you while you're in your fasting journey. So you have more than enough resources and help to help you get over this hump. Okay. And you will. If you commit yourself, you will. Because what does he say? He says, seek me and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be open to you. You taking this step is you seeking him, and you making that decision that you're going to allow yourself to break free from these yokes, right, that are holding you hostage no longer. And you're going to allow yourself to be free, right, absent of that bondage that once used to claim you, right? It was the stronghold. So if you want freedom from those strongholds, you have to go seek him. So I love you guys. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.